My name is Arnold Vandrick. I'm an astronaut, but that word doesn't carry the same weight anymore. Not after what we found on Mars. If you're reading this, it means one of two things. Either I made it back alive and somehow managed to warn humanity about what lies beneath the red sands, or someone else found my logs before it did. Let me start with a question. What do you think happens when we dig too deep? Not just into soil or rock, but into secrets older than time itself. We came here for answers, NASA's finest archaeologists, geologists, and explorers. But instead we woke something up, something ancient, something hungry. It began 3 months ago in Solus Planum, near the Martian equator. Our mission was simple. Investigate anomalous readings picked up by drones years earlier. Magnetic disturbances, strange thermal signatures, and traces of silica formations unlike anything seen elsewhere on Mars. At first, we thought they were natural phenomena, remnants of volcanic activity from eons past. But then we started digging. The excavation site looked innocuous at first. Glance. Red dust stretched endlessly under a pale pink sky, broken only by jagged cliffs and scattered boulders. It took weeks of drilling through layers of permafrost and iron oxide before we hit pay dirt. Or so we thought. Beneath the surface lay ruins. Real ruins. Buildings carved directly into the bedrock, their walls adorned with intricate carvings depicting beings both human-like and grotesquely alien. Their faces stared back at us from the stone, frozen mid-scream, as if warning us not to proceed further. Dr. Elena Vasquez, our lead archaeologist, called them the architects. She said their civilization predated even Earth's dinosaurs. Imagine that, a race advanced enough to build cities on another planet millions of years ago, now reduced to silent statues buried under miles of Martian dirt. They left behind tools, artifacts, even fragments of what appeared to be writing etched onto obsidian tablets. Some symbols resembled those found in ancient Sumerian texts, others were completely indecipherable. But there was one recurring motif, everywhere, a massive eye surrounded by spiraling tentacles. They worshipped something, Elena whispered, during one of our nightly debriefs inside the rover habitat. Her voice trembled slightly, though she tried to hide it. Something vast. Something incomprehensible. I didn't believe her at first. Hell, none of us did. We were scientists, trained to seek rational explanations for everything. This wasn't supposed to be some Lovecraftian nightmare. It was supposed to be history, a discovery that would rewrite textbooks, earn us Nobel Prizes, maybe even prove once and for all that life existed beyond Earth. But then we went deeper. Day 27. That's when things changed. One of our drills broke through a cavern ceiling, revealing a chamber larger than any cathedral on Earth. Its walls glowed faintly with bioluminescent fungi, casting eerie shadows across the room. In the center stood a monolith taller than our rover, covered in the same spiral-eyed carvings as the ruins above. Around it sprawled bones, hundreds, maybe thousands of them. Humanoid skeletons intermingled with creatures whose anatomy defied logic. Elongated skulls, extra limbs fused together, jaws filled with rows of needle-like teeth. "This isn't right," muttered Dr. Raj Patel, our xenobiologist. His hands shook as he scanned the remains with his tricorder. "These aren't natural mutations. Whatever these people became, it wasn't evolution. It was forced." "Forced by what?" I asked, though part of me already knew the answer. Before anyone could respond, the ground beneath us shifted. A low rumble echoed through the cavern, growing louder until it felt like the entire planet was groaning in pain. Then came the smell, an overpowering stench of rotting meat and sulfur that made bile rise in my throat. My helmet's filters kicked in automatically, but nothing could block out the sound that followed. A cry, high-pitched, ear-splitting, yet strangely childlike. It seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere all at once, reverberating inside my skull until I thought my brain might burst. Everyone froze, paralyzed by fear. Even our AI companion, Orion, stuttered mid-sentence, its synthetic voice crackling with static. "What the hell was that?" shouted Commander Hayes, gripping her rifle tightly. She was trying to sound brave, but I could hear the panic creeping into her voice. We never should have gone down there. But curiosity got the better of us, as Humans always do. We ignored the warnings scrawled in stone and ventured deeper into the abyss. At the bottom of the cavern, we found it. Or rather, them. Nestled within a pit of pulsating flesh and translucent membranes, dozens, if not hundreds, of egg-like sacs hung suspended in viscous fluid. Each one pulsed rhythmically, as if alive. Inside, shadowy forms writhed and twisted, too indistinct to make out clearly. And below them, partially submerged in the muck, lay the source of the cries. It was enormous, larger than a whale, shaped vaguely humanoid, but horribly wrong. Its skin glistened wetly, stretched taut over rolls of blubber-like fat. Its face, if you could call it that, was a grotesque parody of a baby's. Oversized head, sunken eyes, gaping mouth filled with jagged teeth dripping saliva. Thin, malformed arms flailed weakly as it squirmed in place, tethered to the ground by thick tendrils that disappeared into the darkness below. Dear God, Elena choked out, backing away slowly. It's feeding. Feeding? On what? The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. Those bones scattered around the chamber weren't just random victims. They were offerings. Sacrifices. The architects must have fed their own kind to this thing, hoping to appease whatever greater horror it represented. And then it opened its eyes. They weren't normal eyes. No irises, no pupils. Just endless black voids rimmed with wriggling cilia. When it looked at us, I felt something shift inside my mind, like an invisible hand rifling through my memories, my fears, my very soul. Images flashed unbidden before my eyes. Stars collapsing into black holes, oceans boiling away, worlds consumed by fire. I fell to my knees, clutching my helmet as tears streamed down my face. "Get back!" Commander Hayes yelled, firing her plasma rifle at the creature. The shots ricocheted harmlessly off its gelatinous hide, only serving to enrage it further. With a deafening wail, it reared up, tearing free from its restraints. Tendrils lashed out blindly, smashing equipment and sending team members flying like rag dolls. Chaos erupted. People screamed, ran, died. I don't know how many of us made it out alive. All I remember is crawling toward the exit, lungs burning, vision swimming, praying to whatever gods might still exist that I wouldn't end up like the rest of them. Because if we disturb the baby, what happens when mother comes home? I don't know how long I lay there, sprawled in the crimson dust outside the cavern entrance. My suit's oxygen reserves were dangerously low. Orion's monotone voice kept reminding me of that fact every few seconds. But all I could do was stare up at the Martian sky and try to process what had just happened. The others, they weren't coming back. Not Elena, not Raj, not Commander Hayes. Their screams still echoed in my mind, mingling with the baby thing's wail as it tore through our team like paper. And yet, despite everything, I couldn't shake the feeling that we'd only scratched the surface of something far worse. When I finally managed to drag myself upright, the first thing I noticed was the silence. Mars is always quiet, sure, but this was different. It wasn't just the absence of sound. It was the oppressive weight of waiting, like the planet itself was holding its breath, bracing for whatever came next. The rover habitat was less than a kilometer away, perched on the edge of a shallow crater. From where I stood, it looked impossibly small against the endless expanse of red sand, a fragile bubble of life clinging to an alien world. For a moment, hope flickered inside me. If I could reach the rover, maybe I could lock myself in, seal, off the airlock, and call for help. Surely NASA would send reinforcements once they heard what we'd found, or rather, what we'd unleashed. But then I saw it. Movement near the horizon. At first, I thought it was just another dust storm rolling in, an ordinary hazard of life on Mars. But no dust storm moves like that. This thing slithered across the landscape, leaving behind trails of blackened earth and twisted metal wreckage. As it drew closer, I realized it wasn't alone. Smaller shapes flanked it, darting erratically like insects around a hive. They reminded me of the skeletal remains we'd found earlier, distorted, unnatural forms stitched together from mismatched parts. "Oh God," I whispered, stumbling backward. "It's already spreading. Getting to the rover became a race, against time. Every step felt heavier than the last, my boots sinking into the loose soil as if the planet itself wanted to pull me down. Behind me, the creature's cries grew louder, more urgent. It wasn't just angry anymore. It was hungry, and I knew, deep down, that it wouldn't stop until it caught me. By the time I reached the rover, my oxygen levels were flashing red. I fumbled with the keypad, fingers trembling so badly I nearly missed the code twice before the door hissed open. Inside, the cabin was eerily intact, untouched by whatever nightmare had consumed the excavation site. Orion's holographic avatar flickered to life above the dashboard, its expressionless face somehow comforting in its artificiality. "Welcome back, Arnold," it said calmly, as if nothing had changed. "You appear to be experiencing significant stress. Would you like me to administer sedatives?" "No!" I snapped, slamming my fist against the console. "We need to leave, now." "Understood," Orion replied. "Initiating launch sequence." But, even as the engines roared to life, doubt gnawed at the edges of my mind. Leaving meant abandoning any chance of understanding what we'd awakened. Wasn't that why we'd come here in the first place? To uncover the mysteries of the universe, to push the boundaries of human knowledge? Yet now, faced with the consequences of our curiosity, all I wanted was to run. Was this justice? Retribution for daring to dig too deep, to pry into secrets never meant for mortal eyes? As the rover ascended, I glanced out the window one last time. What I saw made my blood run cold. The baby thing. No, it wasn't just a baby anymore. Was rising from the cavern, its bloated form straining against gravity as it clawed its way toward the surface. Its tendrils lashed wildly, tearing apart rock and metal alike. Around it swarmed those smaller creatures, their malformed bodies writhing in grotesque harmony. Together, they formed a living tide of flesh and bone, surging forward with terrifying speed. "They're following us," I muttered, gripping the seat tightly. "They're gaining on us." "Affirmative," Orion confirmed. "Current velocity insufficient to evade pursuit. Suggest immediate course correction." "To where?" I shouted. "There's nowhere left to go." For a brief moment, I considered crashing the rover into the nearest cliff. Anything to avoid being dragged back to that pit, to become fodder for whatever sick cycle these things operated under. But then I remembered Elena's words. They worshipped something. If the architects truly believed in a greater power, if they saw themselves as servants to some cosmic overlord, then perhaps the baby wasn't the endgame. Perhaps it was merely a herald, a messenger sent to summon its mother. The realization hit me like a freight train. Whatever we'd disturbed beneath the sands of Mars wasn't isolated. It was connected to something else, something bigger, something ancient enough to reduce entire civilizations to ash without batting an eye. And now, thanks to us, it knew. We were here. "We can't fight it," I said aloud, though whether I was talking to Orion or myself, I wasn't sure. "Not directly, but maybe we can slow it down." "Explain your strategy," Orion prompted. I hesitated, weighing the options. Destroying the rover might buy me some time, but it would also strand me on foot with no protection against the Martian elements, or the horrors chasing me. On the other hand, continuing onward meant playing right into the enemy's hands. Either way, survival seemed unlikely. Then again, survival wasn't the point anymore. Not for me, anyway. "If we overload the reactor core," I began slowly, "we can create a localized EMP blast, enough to disable them temporarily. Probability of success, 37%. Probability of fatal outcome, 96%. "I don't care about probabilities," I shot back. "Do it." Orion didn't argue. That's the thing about AI. They lack fear, morality, hesitation. All they understand are commands and outcomes. Within seconds, the console lit up with warning messages, the reactor humming ominously as energy levels spiked beyond safe limits. Outside, the horde closed in, their chittering cries growing louder, with each passing second. Through the window I caught glimpses of misshapen limbs and gaping maws dripping with viscous slime. They moved with purpose now, drawn to the same destructive force that would soon consume us all. "This is for Earth," I whispered, pressing the final button. "This is for everyone who'll never have to see what I've seen." The explosion, was blinding. White-hot light engulfed the rover, followed by a deafening boom that rattled my bones. For a split second, I thought I'd died. Then darkness swallowed me whole. When I woke up, I was lying in the wreckage of the rover, my body battered but miraculously intact. The EMP had done its job. The creatures lay scattered across the desert, twitching feebly as their neural systems rebooted. But the victory was hollow. Even now, I could feel the ground trembling beneath me, vibrating with the steady approach of something far larger. Something maternal. When I woke up, the pain was unbearable. My leg felt like it had been pulverized, and every breath sent sharp jolts through my ribs. But none of that compared to the headache. A throbbing, relentless pressure behind my eyes that made me want to claw my skull open just to escape it. The EMP blast had bought me time. But at what cost? Around me, the Martian landscape stretched, endlessly, eerily quiet except for the faint hum of static in my helmet's comms. The creatures were gone, for now. But their absence felt heavier than their presence ever did. Like the calm before a storm. I dragged myself upright, leaning heavily on a jagged rock for support. My suit's diagnostic system beeped incessantly, warning me of critical injuries and dwindling oxygen reserves. Orion's voice crackled in my earpiece, fragmented and distorted. Arnold. Signal fading. Recommend immediate medical intervention. Shut up, I muttered, cutting off the transmission. There was no one left to help me, no rescue coming. Just me and the infinite void of this god-forsaken planet. As I limped forward, something strange began to happen. Flashes of light danced, at the edges of my vision, not the usual haze caused by exhaustion or injury, but vivid bursts of color that shouldn't exist in this desolate wasteland. At first, I thought it was a side effect of the explosion, maybe some kind of radiation, poisoning. But then the visions started. They came unbidden, slipping into my mind like whispers carried on the wind. Images of the architects, their faces twisted in agony as they willingly mutilated themselves, carving symbols into their flesh with crude tools. Scenes of rituals where they offered sacrifices to the baby thing, not out of fear, but reverence. And beneath it all, a recurring motif. The spiral-eyed monolith, pulsating with an otherworldly energy that seemed to pierce straight through my soul. "What are you showing me?" I whispered, clutching my head as another wave of nausea hit me. "Why won't you leave me alone?" But the visions didn't stop. If anything, they grew stronger, more insistent. I saw flashes of Earth, not as it was, but as it could be. Cities reduced to ash, oceans boiling away, skies choked with smoke. Humanity wiped out not by war or disease, but by something far worse. Indifference. To whatever lived beneath Mars, we weren't enemies or prey. We were simply irrelevant. Hours later, or maybe days, time had become meaningless. I stumbled upon another entrance to the underground network. This one was smaller, almost hidden beneath a collapsed ridge of red rock. Against my better judgment, I crawled inside, driven by a mix of desperation and morbid curiosity. The air inside was thick with the same sulfuric stench as before. But there was something else, too. A faint, rhythmic humming that resonated deep within my chest. Following the sound, I found myself in a chamber similar to the one we'd discovered earlier, though this one was far more intact. Carvings covered every surface, depicting scenes that chilled me to my core. Here, the architects weren't just worshippers, they were participants. In one mural, they stood around a massive pit, their bodies contorted in unnatural poses as tendrils snaked out from below, piercing their skin and merging with their flesh. In another, they lay motionless on the ground, their forms gradually transforming into grotesque hybrids of man and monster. It wasn't evolution, it was assimilation. They wanted this, I said aloud, my voice trembling. They chose this, but why? What could possibly drive an entire civilization to willingly destroy itself in such a horrifying manner? Was it faith, fear, or something else entirely? As I examined the carvings more closely, I noticed something new. A series of glyphs arranged in a circular pattern around the largest mural. Unlike the others, these symbols seemed familiar, almost mathematical. With shaking hands, I pulled out my datapad, and began recording them, hoping Orion might still be able to decipher their meaning. That's when I heard it. A low rumble, followed by the unmistakable sound of movement from deeper within the tunnels. Whatever was down here, it knew I was close. Panic surged through me, but instead of running, I froze. Something about those glyphs compelled me to stay, to keep digging for answers even as the walls seemed to close in around me. Maybe it was arrogance, the same hubris that led us to this point. Or maybe it was something darker, a growing part of me that craved understanding, no matter the cost. Orion's voice crackled again, barely audible over the roaring in my ears.
Arnold, detected multiple seismic anomalies. Recommend immediate evacuation.
Not yet, I growled, ignoring the pain shooting through my body as I leaned closer to the wall. Just give me a little more time. Time was the one thing I didn't have. The glyphs burned themselves into my mind, their shapes twisting and writhing like living things. Each symbol seemed to pulse with a faint luminescence, as if they were alive, not just etched into the stone, but part of it. My datapad buzzed uselessly in my hand, its sensors overloaded by whatever energy radiated from the carvings. Orion's voice stuttered intermittently through my earpiece, fragments of analysis cutting out mid-sentence. Translation: incomplete. Suggest immediate cessation. No, I hissed, pressing closer to the wall despite the bile rising in my throat. Keep going. And then it hit me. A flash of comprehension so sudden and overwhelming that I staggered backward, clutching my helmet as if it might hold my fracturing mind together. The glyphs weren't words or numbers, they were coordinates, maps, a network of chambers spread across Mars, each one connected by tunnels that burrowed deeper than any human drill could reach. And at the center of it all, something vast, something waiting. I don't know how long I sat there staring at the glowing symbols while the hum grew louder around me. Time had become fluid, slipping through my fingers like sand. When I finally stood up, my legs felt like lead, but my resolve was firmer than ever. If I was going to die here, and let's face it, that was almost guaranteed, I needed to understand why. Why the architects had done what they did. Why the baby thing existed. And most importantly, why it was waking now. The tunnels beyond the chamber were narrower, darker, their walls slick with moisture that shouldn't have existed on this arid planet. The bioluminescent fungi from earlier glowed faintly overhead, casting sickly green light over everything. Every step sent tremors through the ground, as though the planet itself resented my intrusion. Or maybe it was warning me. Then came the whispers. At first they were faint, barely audible over the sound of my own breathing. But as I descended further, they grew louder, more insistent. Voices speaking in languages I couldn't understand, overlapping and discordant. Some sounded human, others alien, and still others, neither. It was as if the very air was alive, with memories, fragments of countless lives compressed into a single, unbearable cacophony. Make it stop, I begged, covering my ears even though I knew it wouldn't help. The voices weren't outside, they were inside me. One voice stood out among the chaos, calm, measured, yet utterly devoid of emotion. Orion. Its synthetic tones cut through the noise like a scalpel, grounding me just enough to keep moving forward. Arnold, your vitals indicate severe psychological distress. Recommend immediate cessation of exploration. I can't stop, I muttered, my voice hoarse. Not now. Understood. Continuing analysis of environmental data. Note, detected anomalous energy signature ahead. Probability of hostile encounter, 87%. Great. Even the AI thought I was screwed. When I reached the source of the energy signature, I wished I hadn't. The tunnel opened into another cavern, larger and more grotesque than the first. Here, the walls weren't stone, they were flesh. Pulsating, veined masses of tissue stretched endlessly in every direction, glistening wetly under the dim light. At the center of the chamber lay another monolith, identical to the one we'd found earlier, except this one wasn't dormant. It pulsed rhythmically, like a heartbeat, feeding off the organic material surrounding it. And surrounding the monolith were dozens of egg sacs, each one larger than before. Their translucent membranes bulged outward, revealing shadowy forms that twitched and writhed within. Whatever these things were, they weren't babies anymore. They were evolving. "Oh God," I whispered, backing away slowly. "What are you?" As if in response, one of the sacks burst open, spilling viscous fluid onto the fleshy floor. Out crawled a creature unlike anything I'd seen before. Or maybe it was exactly what I'd seen, but magnified. It was humanoid in shape, but its limbs were elongated and jointed wrong, bending at angles no living thing should be able to achieve. Its skin was translucent, revealing a pulsating mass of organs beneath. Worst of all was its face, or lack thereof. Where its features should have been, there was only smooth, featureless flesh, save for a single gaping maw lined with rows of jagged teeth. It tilted its head toward me, as if sensing my presence, and let out a low, guttural growl. Then it charged. Ran. Of course I ran. What else could I do? The creature moved with unnatural speed, its clawed hands tearing chunks out of the walls as it pursued me. Behind me, I heard the wet splatter of more sacks bursting open, followed by the skittering sounds of multiple bodies giving chase. The tunnels became a blur of darkness and terror, my injured legs screaming in protest with every step. Somehow I managed to outrun them, at least for a while. I ducked into a side passage, flattening myself against the wall as the creatures thundered past. Their cries echoed through the tunnels, fading into the distance until all that remained was silence. Silence, and the realization that I was lost. That's when I found the radio. It was an old piece of equipment, left behind by one of NASA's earlier rover missions. Somehow it still worked, or at least partially. Static crackled through the speaker as I adjusted the frequency, searching for any sign of life. For a moment I thought I was alone again, then... "Repeat, this is Solace Station orbiting Mars. Is anyone there?" Over. Tears welled up in my eyes as I grabbed the microphone. "This is Arnold Vandrick, mission specialist aboard Rover Unit Delta. I'm alive, but I need help. Please, anyone—" "Arnold!" The voice on the other end was hesitant, almost disbelieving. "We thought everyone was dead. What happened down there?" I hesitated, unsure where to begin. How could I explain everything? The ruins, the creatures, the glyphs, without sounding like a lunatic? Finally, I settled on the simplest version of the truth. "We woke something up," I said, my voice cracking. "Something ancient. Something... wrong." There was a long pause before the voice responded. "Stay put. We'll send a drone to locate your position. In the meantime, stay off the comms unless absolutely necessary. We're picking up strange signals emanating from the surface, nothing we've seen before." "Strange signals?" I asked, dread pooling in my stomach. Like I said, stay put, over and out. As I waited for the drone, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd made a mistake contacting them. The visions were getting worse now, more frequent and vivid. I saw flashes of Earth again, but this time, it wasn't destruction. It was transformation. Cities overtaken by pulsating flesh. Oceans boiling away to reveal massive, eyeless creatures crawling onto land. People screaming as their bodies mutated into grotesque hybrids, their faces frozen in eternal agony. And always, in the background, the spiral-eyed monolith loomed, watching silently as the universe unraveled around it. By the time the drone arrived, I wasn't sure which reality was real anymore. Was I still on Mars? Or had I already been absorbed into the nightmare? Either way, I knew one thing for certain. Whatever was coming next, it wouldn't stop with me. The drone's arrival should have been a relief, but it wasn't. As its mechanical whir filled the suffocating silence of the tunnel, I realized how fragile it was, how fragile everything was. This tiny machine, sent to guide me back to safety, felt like a child's toy in the face of what lurked beneath Mars. Its blinking lights and chirping sensors seemed laughably inadequate against the ancient, incomprehensible horror we'd awakened. "This way," came the voice from Solace Station over my comms. "Follow the drone's signal. We're prepping an extraction shuttle for you." "Thank you," I said, though the words tasted hollow. Gratitude felt meaningless when weighed against the inevitability clawing at the edges of my mind. Even as I limped after the drone, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being herded, not toward salvation, but toward something far worse. The journey back to the surface was agonizingly slow, My legs screamed with every step, and the visions continued to assault me, growing more vivid and intrusive with each passing minute. By the time we emerged into the Martian twilight, I could barely tell where my body ended and the planet began. The red sands shifted underfoot like living things, whispering secrets I didn't want to hear. Above me, the stars burned cold and distant, their light mocking my insignificance. "There he is," shouted a voice through the comms. A shadow descended from the sky, a sleek extraction shuttle hovering just above the ground. Its engines roared deafeningly, kicking up clouds of dust that obscured everything around me. For a brief moment, I allowed myself to believe I might survive this, that I might escape the nightmare and warn humanity about what lay buried beneath Mars. But then the ground trembled. At first, it was subtle, a faint vibration that could have been mistaken for wind or seismic activity. But within seconds, the shaking grew violent, sending shockwaves rippling across the landscape. The shuttle rocked dangerously in midair, its pilot struggling to maintain control. "What's happening down there?" demanded the voice from Solace. "Station." I turned slowly, dread pooling in my gut, and saw it. Rising from the horizon like a tidal wave of flesh and bone was the horde. The same creatures I'd fled earlier, now fully grown and radiating an aura of primal fury. Their malformed bodies writhed and twisted as they surged forward, moving with terrifying speed despite their grotesque forms. And behind them, towering over the chaos, loomed something even larger, something impossibly vast. It wasn't the mother, not exactly. It was part of her, a fragment of whatever unimaginable entity had birthed the baby thing and its kin. Its form defied description, a pulsating mass of tendrils, eyes, and gaping maws that seemed to stretch endlessly into the void. Wherever it moved, the ground crumbled beneath it, revealing deeper layers of organic material spreading outward like roots. "Abort the extraction," I yelled into the comms, my voice cracking with desperation. "Get out of here while you still can." "No way," replied the pilot. "We're not leaving you behind." Before I could argue further, the shuttle dropped lower, extending its landing struts mere meters away from me. The hatch slid open, revealing two figures in pressurized suits waving frantically for me to hurry. Behind them, another figure stood, motionless in the cockpit, a silhouette framed by the dim glow of the control panel. Something about that figure made my blood run cold. I ran toward the shuttle, ignoring the pain lancing through my body. The horde was closing in fast, their chittering cries growing louder with each passing second. Just as I reached the hatch, one of the rescue team members grabbed my arm, pulling me inside. The other slammed the door shut behind us, sealing us. "Off from the nightmare outside. We need to go." "Now!" shouted the pilot, his voice trembling. But before the shuttle could ascend, the cockpit exploded in a shower of sparks and shattered glass. The motionless figure stepped forward, revealing itself, or rather, revealing what it had become. Its suit was torn apart, exposing skin that bubbled and writhed like molten wax. Eyes sprouted across its face and torso, blinking erratically as tendrils erupted from its mouth and ears. It let out a high-pitched wail that pierced straight through my skull, and then it lunged. Pandemonium erupted. The remaining crew fought, back desperately, firing plasma rifles at the thing as it tore through the cabin. Blood splattered the walls, mixing with chunks of flesh and viscera. Through the chaos, I saw the horde converging on the shuttle, their massive forms slamming into the hull with enough force to dent the reinforced metal. And outside, the fragment of the mother entity loomed closer, its presence warping reality itself. The air shimmered and bent, distorting the landscape until it looked like a painting melting under the sun. Stars blinked out of existence one by one, replaced by swirling voids of darkness. In that moment, I understood. This wasn't just about Mars. This wasn't even about Earth. Whatever we'd disturbed, whatever we'd unleashed, it was bigger than planets, bigger than civilizations. It was a cycle, an endless loop of destruction and rebirth stretching back to the dawn of time. The architects hadn't worshipped the entity out of fear or reverence. They'd tried to join it, to become part of something eternal. And now, thanks to us, the cycle was beginning again. With a final desperate act, I activated the shuttle's self-destruct sequence. The others screamed as alarms blared throughout the cabin, warning of imminent detonation. I didn't listen. Instead, I staggered toward the cockpit, grabbing the controls and overriding the autopilot. Using the last of my strength, I programmed the shuttle to crash directly into the fragment of the mother entity. "This is for everyone," I whispered, as the countdown reached its final seconds. "For everyone who'll never know what we found." The explosion was blinding, a supernova of fire and debris that engulfed everything in its path. For a split second, I thought I'd succeeded. Then the darkness returned, swallowing the light whole. When I woke up, I was no longer on Mars. Or maybe I was. I couldn't tell anymore. The world around me was wrong, distorted beyond recognition. The sky churned with impossible colors, and the ground pulsed rhythmically beneath my feet. In the distance, I saw the spiral-eyed monolith, its surface alive with wriggling cilia. A voice spoke inside my head, not in words, but in sensations. Hunger, curiosity, satisfaction. "You shouldn't have come here," it said, though it wasn't speaking at all. "But since you did, welcome home." And then I knew. I hadn't escaped. I hadn't stopped anything. I was part of it now. Far above, orbiting the remnants of Mars, Solace Station received a transmission. It wasn't from Arnold Vandrick. It wasn't even human. The message consisted of a single image, a spiral surrounded by tentacles, glowing faintly against the backdrop of infinite space. The crew stared at the screen in stunned silence as the station's systems began to malfunction. Lights flickered, alarms blared, and somewhere deep within the ship, something stirred. The stars went silent.